Yeah, so how is your weekend? What do you have planned? I ain't got no plans for this weekend besides the crap we just talked about.
I usually play my Pathfinder campaign on Saturday nights,
Oh, nice.
um, but he changed it so that we're playing it on Sunday night, and I also have a Sunday morning mini campaign that I play in, so I will be playing two sessions on Sunday and absolutely nothing on Saturday.
Oh, so you got like a whole like you almost got busy and then had to just get a day off.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So is one of them like a? Are they all streamed or are they like?
No, one of them is our home game. It's a Pathfinder 1 campaign.
Oh, cool, cool.
We drive like an hour to go to our DM's house every weekend.
Oh,
Um,
wow, that's
Obviously I
dedication,
was like,
Jesus.
yeah, where I live is very far away from most people. Not
Oh,
very, but I'm an hour out from basically all civilization that people know of in California.
you're out in the middle of the desert somewhere.
Yes, exactly. It's why I
How's
can have
the
chickens.
How's the weather for you though? It's been crazy. I've been saying that you guys have been stealing our snow, and then we got it all last night.
Yeah, I'm not like totally out in the desert. I'm somewhat in a valley. I call it the Dust Bowl because I'm quite literally surrounded by mountains in every direction, north, east, west, south, mountains everywhere.
Oh, nice, nice, nice.
um, Yeah, so there's been snow on the mountains a little bit, and it's actually snowed out where I live once or twice, which was kind of insane for California weather.
Oh wow.
But
Yeah,
it's been nice recently.
That's good. I'm gonna play our thing.
Hello.
Welcome back to Don't Fekk Friday.
Don't
Woo! Yay! Don't Fekk Friday. Woo! Yay! Don't Fekk Friday. Woo! Yay!
It's going to be fun.
Hmm. Oh, hello there. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you guys are excited to talk about this as I am, which is not terribly because this is an absolute dumpster fire. Thorn has come to join us today, somebody who's actually a professional in the field that we're going to talk about. Thorn, would you like to introduce your lovely self to the people and the fools out there who do not know who you are?
Well, hello, everyone. I am Thorn or Thorn Chan. Um, as she mentioned, I am a sex worker, and I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry I'm not on camera today, but I am a disabled content creator who complains and talks about a lot of things online, just like Chesh does, and that's why I love them.
I mean, yeah, it do be like that. I do enjoy complaining about
There's a lot of things to
nonsense.
be talked about.
There is a lot of things to be talked about. What
I'm a
happened to
big
my hand?
analyzer.
I'm all about that kind of stuff. So, do you want to tell people sort of what you, because sex worker is a really, really broad term, and I think we're going to get into how that kind of
Yes.
broad terminology can be
Yeah,
problematic.
absolutely. I specifically am one of the OG like OnlyFans creators. I say OG as in pre-pandemic before it became popular and well known what OnlyFans is.
Right.
Um, I mostly do photo work. I do not have like I wouldn't consider myself like a porn star. I do not like film myself having sex with other partners. I do not shame those who do. Some of my best friends do fantastic porn. It's just not me. I mostly sell photo content, and the during the pandemic, I've gotten into some fetish content as in eating food for people.
You're doing the food stuff. I love the food stuff. I always wanted to do the stick my feet in cream cheese. I always thought that would be
Yeah,
super fun.
I have offered, foot fetish content to people. It is not my fetish, but I'm always trying to like branch out. Haven't gotten any takers. That's fine, but I've gotten some foodies, and I love them, and they make me eat weird things or just a lot of desserts.
You know what? That is nothing to complain about. I am all for people sending me food. I recently had to take off all of the Dungeons and Dragons stuff, which we won't get into here. That'll be a stream for later.
Mhm.
But I took all of the Amazon wish list stuff that I had that was D&D related off of it. I was like, okay, well, bye.
Yep.
Sad day for me, I guess. But either way, it sounds like not only is it a large field, like it's a really big umbrella term, but there's so many like different specific things.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of people who do sex work that don't even realize they do sex work just because they don't consider it sexual or sex work. Like
Mm-hmm.
models who do boudoir photo shoots, those are very tame, very, covered, not very sexual, but they're very sensual. And they don't consider themselves sex workers sometimes, but that would still be considered in that branch, as well as some cosplayers who do lewd photo shoots, people who make those weird smash cuts on Twitter that we were talking about, where people like
Yeah,
make
yeah.
food with their feet. That's fetish content. That's sex
Oh,
work. Some people wouldn't
abs.
consider that, but it's absolutely sex work. There's a lot
No,
of different
yeah, for sure.
varieties.
I absolutely agree with you. There is a certain degree of like, no, you're doing this thing, and you know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because if you didn't,
Exactly.
then you wouldn't be doing it. Is that like did that make sense? I think that was something that made
Yes,
sense. So
that
I'm
makes
gonna
sense.
apologies to chat real quick. You guys are not on screen right now because YouTube decided it wants to throw a fit about something. I don't know what its problem is. But sorry, you guys aren't actually on screen right now in the middle like you would normally be. Oh well, too bad. You're gonna have to deal with that. Some things that have changed in the setup. Top right corner is friendly creators. There is a like, share, comment button. And if you guys see that goblin over in the far side, I want to get phrases and things that you guys have picked out, so that will change throughout a stream. But I'm gonna need you guys to give me your input on what you guys think should go in there. And if somebody doesn't tell me Bodie McBoatface, I'm gonna be kind of upset about it. So you saw this thread. Let's probably talk about who is this guy, because it's a little bit. A lot of people don't know who King Crocoduck is, and I'm pretty sure you're one of them. I don't think before this thread you knew who like had ever interacted or seen this person before.
I did not. I was thinking this is probably the best publicity he's going to get.
If only that were the case. King Crocoduck actually has quite a large following on YouTube, which is
Uh-oh.
a degree of it is kind of holdover from back in the day. Let me look at his actual numbers right now, because he took a long time off because he was doing PhDs. So his YouTube channel has 92.2K subscribers. So he's just
Oh.
under that 100 mark. Yep. And his last video was 4 months ago at 7.8K views. It's 30 seconds long and it's titled Advanced Political Discourse, and I am not clicking on that. I'm afraid of that. Maybe I'll watch that later. And then before that, he's got one with 41K views from 4 months ago that's called The Poverty of Lived Experiences. So 6 months ago, he's got an hour and 20-minute video with 18K views, called On Facts and Feelings. So yeah, there's definitely some stuff to explore here and maybe dive into a little bit more later and taking a look at his actual YouTube content. But for now, we're going to look at this hot take, which I happened across on Twitter, and it just says, very bold of sex workers to demand respect for their profession when their career is literally the embodiment of self-abasement. So, as somebody who works in that field, what's your first, like, because I know a lot of people would have like a hair trigger response to this, but what do you think?
My first response is honestly just like, what job isn't a form of self abasement? You know what I mean? Everyone doesn't like work. No one likes working. Even the people who turn their hobbies into jobs, which is actually ironic because most sex workers genuinely enjoy doing it, and that's why they do it. But what what job isn't self abasement? I think honestly, being a sex worker, this is probably the least degrading job I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, I don't know. That makes sense. But I figured we'd kind of have a talk with particularly the amount of the debate me bro side of the internet has a very clear cut like set of rules that I'm calling to call it a set of guidelines that if you are a professional and you speak, you stay in your lane and speak on the things that you know about, and it's a standard sort of rule or guideline to say if this is a topic that I'm not well versed in, I say I don't know and shuffle it off to someone who is a professional in that field. I'm just don't think we're seeing that here.
Yeah, that whole thread was a mess. He kept comparing sex workers to circus performers, referring to them as circus freaks, which honestly also just made me stop and go, well, what's wrong with circus performers?
Yeah, there's a right here, I believe, because it's but being a sex worker is literally being a circus freak, except instead of throwing peanuts, people just nut. And I'm not gonna lie, like, I kind of thought that was a little bit funny, just the way that's worded. But bro, what? Now, to be clear, Crocoduck did insist and want to make sure that this was known. So I want to make sure that this gets out here because I'm not interested in taking anybody out of context. So I had said once we've heard a little bit from the other side, we was talking about potentially coming on because I wanted to have this conversation with you. He said, fine, as long as it's understood that I don't have anything against sex workers outside of the context of their profession, and that it's their profession that I fundamentally don't respect. People who are forced into that kind of situation have my pity, but they are not typically the sort of people who demand that their work is respected. They are more the type to just quietly do what they have to do to survive.
It's a lot to unpack there.
There's a lot to unpack there. So just before we do that, I'm going to read off real quick. Jack of Hearts for 5 says, his, referring to Crocoduck's biggest claim to fame, was destroying Kent Hovind in a debate, which is about as impressive as hanging a spoon from your nose. And then Helios said, no one suggests that the most Chess's chat thing we can do is troll Chesh by refusing to do the thing she had explicitly stated she wants. Love you. Thanks. Don't send me Bodie McBoatface. I see how it is. All right. So where do you start unpacking something like this as somebody who works in the field? Because you have more insight than I do, for sure.
I think first and foremost is that this person just has a fundamental misunderstanding of the profession. Not only my profession, but circus performers. It's not a P.T. Barnum circus freak show anything anymore. People aren't usually being exploited for their oddities to be made fun of. Like, that's not how circuses are. Like,
right.
It just shows that they don't know what they're talking about. Most sex workers, if I had to talk about the majority of sex workers, especially given how many of them are now just OnlyFans creators who do digital creation, most sex workers aren't being exploited. Sure, maybe some of us are exploiting ourselves, and there's definitely a lot to be said about like sex workers who are taken advantage of by people like Andrew Tate. But most of us did this because we chose to. A lot of my friends who are really, really big OnlyFans creators genuinely just love doing this. This is something they've always loved doing before they started getting paid for it. They loved having trains ran on them. They loved posting pictures of themselves on Instagram. They loved doing these things. And now they're just making money off of it the same way most people like making money off of their hobbies, the same way that they are a YouTuber. You know what I mean?
Right.
But just most people aren't being taken advantage of.
Well, what is it the entertainment part that's the abasement part? Is it the sex part that makes it abasement? Is it like which part of the sex worker is the abasement part? Is it the fact that it's filmed? Because realistically, I'm here to entertain people and have conversations about whatever the hell comes up. So I'm putting myself out there on camera, and people could be fapping to me for all I fucking know.
They could be doing it to anything. Right. At any given time of the day. It does not matter.
Exactly. So what classifies under this heading? And this is what I mean when I say like the term sex work is incredibly broad, and deciding what the abasement part of sex work actually is. Is it going to work 9 to 5 when you've gotten up in the morning and you don't want to get up, and now you've got to go get gussied up and be in front of a camera? Because like that's a lot of people.
Exactly, yeah. I think it really is just from their own viewpoint of disrespecting them. Like, I don't see people seeing me eat food or masturbate or something as abasement, especially when it's hidden behind a paywall. But for them, I think it's just the fact that people are observing and watching. Like, I feel like it's just the fact that they themselves disrespect it as an act, that from their perspective, they're like, oh, it's a basement because everyone watching disrespects you. It's because to them, like they said with circus performers, they're like, people are throwing peanuts at them. I'm like, who's going to Moulin Rouge and throwing peanuts? You
Yeah,
know? So I'm sitting here
you're
like,
getting kicked out by the bouncer if you start throwing things at the strippers. Like, have you never been to a strip club?
exactly. So I'm sitting thinking like, no one who is purchasing and enjoying this content is here to like degrade us. No one who's, unless that's like the fetish you are doing, which in itself I guess makes it not degrading because that's what you want. You know, like
Right.
I'm just thinking like I don't understand how to them it's abasement and degrading when to the performers and the consumers we're all consensually enjoying it. No one's here to
Mhm.
make fun of each other. It's the people who aren't participating in the actual industry and not consuming the media that are more likely to make fun of it. You know what I mean?
I mean, like he's doing.
Exactly.
So there's something to be said, I think, about like this the fundamental misunderstanding of who is in control of the situation when it comes to sex work. It's like misunderstanding like a dom sub situation, like a BDSM situation. The sub is the person in control of that situation or has the most control over that situation, as it should be. But like if you're doing OnlyFans, there's literally nothing stopping you from ever turning off the camera and stopping making content. You can do that.
I mean,
You're in 100%
even with
control.
yeah, even with the people who are doing IRL content, people who are actually going out like prostitutes who are going out and having sex with their customers,
Mhm.
unless it is abuse and they are being taken advantage of by an employer, they are usually self-employed and can deny any customer they want. If someone comes to me with a request and I don't want to do it digitally, I could say no or block them. If a prostitute has a customer and they don't want them to, they don't want to have sex with them, they don't have to. They have every right to say no, and that's something that, you know, Crocoduck seems to not understand in this thread is they keep saying like, well, if you don't want to have sex with someone and you have sex with someone you don't want to, that's like disrespectful and degrading yourself because you're having sex with someone you don't want to have sex with. And I'm like, except we don't do that. Except
Right.
that prostitutes don't do that unless they're forced into it and it's non-consensual.
Then it's not sex work
Then
anymore.
yes, exactly.
Now you're going into the illegal side. Well, I mean, some of these problems exist because of like current political climates and current laws that
Mm-hmm.
that exist that probably need to be changed, or at least adapted or abolished entirely, depending on where you live and what you're talking about. But there's if you're conflating sex work with sex trafficking, you're
Mm-hmm.
now talking about two inherently different things. I don't think you should respect people whose job it is to sex traffic people. Like, slavery isn't
Exactly.
cool, bro, but that's not sex work. And conflating those things, I think, is probably really, really problematic and shows like a really
Yeah.
narrow viewpoint of just sex in general.
Oh yeah, and it doesn't help that media makes it always seem so bad. Like in
Oh,
media, every
true.
time you see a brothel or a whorehouse or something, a lot in reality, most of those are very consensual. It is not
Mhm.
someone abusing people, locking them in rooms, on mattresses on the floor, chained up like you see on TV. And it's also I just feel like every version of sex work I've seen on TV, even on
Mhm.
Euphoria where it's supposed to be a positive representation of a digital webcam sex worker,
Right.
was also inaccurate and negative because it was a 17-year-old underage girl who made it look like it was easy money. Like all of these depictions in media make it look bad, even the positive representations. So it's like I don't blame people for being ignorant and assuming that all sex work is sex trafficking or some
Right.
form of abuse,
Well, I
but
think he
it's
mentioned
just
this.
not.
Sorry. Yeah, I think he
No, you're
mentioned this
fine.
right here. It says, it's their profession that I fundamentally don't respect. People who are forced into that kind of situation have my pity. And there's your confusion. There's your conflation
Exactly.
right there. It's people aren't forced into sex work. People make a decision. People who are forced into sex work are being or that's sex trafficking. These are you have now these are completely you're conflating apples and oranges at that point.
Yeah, and
Um,
even survival
mhm.
sex workers who chose to do this still, we still demand respect. If anything,
Yeah.
some of us demand it more because we're like, we have to do this job the same way a construction worker has to go do construction work,
Mhm.
or someone has to like mow someone's lawn or something, because they need to work, do manual labor. Like,
Mhm.
it's like, even if I didn't choose to become a sex worker, I chose to do it because I needed money, and that's respectable. So in the next comment right under the one on screen right now, he
Mhm.
says, like, people who do it for survival sex work don't demand respect. They just do it to survive. I'm like, that's false. I'm a survival sex worker. I started doing it at 18 years old because I needed money.
Mhm.
And I think it deserves respect. Especially, I wouldn't consider myself even good at this job, because those who are good at their job work really hard. And it's
Right.
a hell of a respectable job with how much they put into it, you know?
Well, it's physical labor, it's emotional labor, it's labor the same way anything else is labor. Like you work 9 to 5 or whatever the hours happen to be. You're working an 8-hour day. You've got to do your photo shoot, you got to do your editing, you got to do your filming, you got to do your setup and your makeup and your costuming and whatever needs to be done because
Mhm.
again, sex work is such a broad term. You're talking about, does sex work include the person holding the camera?
Exactly.
Or
And it
or is
does. If
holding
you
the
are
or
a
is holding the
cameraman for porn,
camera
you're a sex worker.
right, exactly. So is holding the camera more respectable because your ass isn't showing?
To them, it would be, apparently. Doesn't
It's
matter
such
what
an
they do. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, editors, people who edit the
right.
porn, are they
Yeah.
disrespectful? Like, are they debasing themselves because they're sitting and watching porn for 12 hours? No. So why is it the
Frame
person
by
doing the
frame.
porn for 12 hours? Yeah.
So like which part is the abasement part? And to me it just seems like because to in his defense, right? I would
Mhm.
point out that he throws out here, oh, I seem to have gotten, here we go. In this part here, he leaves it open-ended. He leaves it open-ended that he's talking about sex work in general, male, female, trans,
Yeah.
bi, whatever gender specific, yada yada yada. However, later on in the thread, and I don't know how easy it's going to be to find, um, he specifies women. So he starts off
Which
leaving it
most people do.
open-ended, which most people do. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of hate against sex work comes from misogyny, and which, that one's obvious. I didn't need to say that for everyone in the chat, but it's just they talk about sex workers as, and especially like OnlyFans. I specifically talk about that one just because that's mostly the topic
Oh,
online.
you mean you're
um
staying in your field? Wow.
yeah, people, I'm staying in my lane, but people will be like, oh man, I wish I was a woman so I could just like easily sign up and just make money. And I'm like, well, first of all, men, women, non-binary, trans, non-trans, literally anyone can make an OnlyFans. Like, just depends on what your niche is and what you want to do. But also, saying you wish you were a woman in a woman-dominated market because you think it's easier when you are just signing up to be like more competition with other people. It's just like this really like,
It's a
it's this
fundamental
weird mindset.
misunderstanding of
Yeah,
business.
it's a misunderstanding, forced, or and like
Mm.
based on like misogyny, where they just think, oh, women have it easy, I wish I was a woman so I could do this. And it's like, that's not that's not
Oh,
how it
I can
works.
show my boobs and it's not hard to have consistent sex all the time if you're a woman. You just have to lay there and take it. It's like, oh, that is not how anything functions. Tell me you've never had sex without telling me you've never had sex.
Just look at the statistics of like the like OnlyFans statistics. Like, if you look at the amount of people who are on the site that are creators that are men, would probably be doing than the statistics of the women on it, because proportionately, if there's way too many women working on OnlyFans
Mhm.
and there's only like a tenth of that, then a tenth of men are doing way better than the 90% of women who are not. Like, it's just this
Yeah, it's
weird
cutting up the pie.
mindset. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
thinking it's about the gender when it's not. It's about the
right.
creator, the type of work they're doing, the content they make, and honestly, how much money they have when they start. People
Yep,
who are already well off are gonna continue to stay well off because people prefer content that seems more professional, that seems more
yep,
rich. Like, people prefer rich people, and they continue that cycle.
yep, yep. Presenting
Not
yourself as
about being a
rich. Yeah.
woman.
EMP
Yeah.
for 10 said the circus freak show was an era between the 1840s and the 1940s where people with oddities couldn't get decent work, so joined the circus as a freak show. Does he know what year it is? I mean, that is a good point. Like, at the end of the day, in my opinion, at the very least, what deserves to be respected is, are you earning enough money to get by in this fucking economy? Period. That's all that matters. And even if you're not, are there options for you? Because I don't think struggling in this economy makes you a bad person or is something to be like talked down on or be condescended to or be shitty about it. Everybody's got to get by, however, by whatever means necessary. Do you think the people who were working at McDonald's are abasing themselves any more or less because they're working at McDonald's because for minimum wage because they have no other option? That's the same presentation, right? It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same argument, but instead of sex work, it's McDonald's employee.
I also think talking about with EMP's comment about the circus freak show 1840s and 1940s is I also want to talk about how popular sex work as in prostitution and whorehouses were and brothels in that specific time period as well.
Yep.
Because creators, actors, performers could not make enough money because arts were not seen as, a real income, So in like the 1840s through 1940s where people were also doing freak shows, some of those people who were working in circus were going home to the brothel to work. Most actresses who were respected were going home to their brothels to work. Like sex work, people mentioned that it's not a profession because it doesn't have a history when it has been a quiet and not only like hidden, quote unquote, hidden history. It's one of the things that's like the foundation of all entertainment. Hollywood would not exist. Hollywood would not exist without sex work.
Right. Monkeys trade for sex. Like the bare bones basic, and any biologist who's studied anything about like any kind of primate species will be able to tell you and show you exactly like, okay, you see that monkey gave that monkey a peanut and now that monkey is blowing that monkey. And it's completely like not gender related. It's just trading. Because it's not even unusual.
Yeah, exactly. It's so common, especially when I think about something like barter systems. I'm like, you could barter sex.
Yeah,
just barter sex.
There are in Pompeii. There's graffiti that is the equivalent to graffiti as you would see in a bathroom stall of "call this person for a good time." Like this shit has existed forever. You go all the way back.
Exactly.
Even if you go back to early America. The West was won from the back of a horse. No, the West was won by riding horseback. Buttocks.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that actually brings me to a good point. I'm actually related to one of the first like stage actresses in California, the West. During the Gold Rush, there was an actress. Her name was Lotta Crabtree. She was Lola Montez's what's the phrase? Lola Montez was her mentor. Lola Montez was a brothel whorehouse worker on the down low. She was one of the biggest performers in the Gold Rush Wild West, and Lotta Crabtree took after that. Lotta Crabtree broke a lot of boundaries. She like played men on stage when women weren't even really allowed to act and men had to play women. She was a woman who played men. She was a woman who played young children. She did everything, and she was the mistress of a whorehouse.
Yep.
Like it's insane. Like that, and she's like so well known. You could watch her in Bonanza. You could like watch her biographies. There's a fountain after her in San Francisco, literally funded through sex work.
Right.
And that's the foundation of all of Hollywood was the Wild West. They started doing stage performances, and then they started bringing in camera and film. Almost every actress and actor in Hollywood was a sex worker.
It sounds to me like you're telling me that YouTube wouldn't exist without sex work. Because if you're ever looking at a technology and where that technology is advancing, follow the porn. Why do we have Blu-ray instead of the DVD alternatives? Because that's the direction porn went in.
Yeah, there's a lot of advancements in cinematography that happened specifically because of sex work. And that's actually one of the reasons why I love the movie X so much. It's that horror movie by Ty West, and its sequel, Pearl, recently came out. It's about them trying to change cinema by adding sex into it. They're like, we can make movies about sex that are cinematic. And it's actually true because that's what happened back in I believe it was either the 60s or 70s. There was a French porn creator who changed cinematography in black and white because he changed the way people were using lighting because of his porn.
Yep.
And that's crazy to me.
Yep. Yeah. And like a lot of actors and actresses that are big in Hollywood start with B films that have like these weird, awkward sex scenes in them half the time. That's not uncommon.
People thought actors from Game of Thrones wouldn't be able to get careers afterwards because they're like, well, you showed your tits and your vagina on screen, you'll never get a career. And now here Emilia Clarke is years later in many amazing franchises despite having 2 aneurysms, you know?
Right.
Like, nudity should not be seen as abasement.
Right.
Like, at the end of the day, it seems like their issue is with nudity and the body being perceived or doing weird things. I'm like, that's not degrading.
Yeah, it seems to be a question about what is the specific thing you're talking about is degrading, and why do you think that?
Yeah, exactly.
And the why I don't quite understand. At one point, he goes on to say that, well, I wouldn't want my kid being a sex worker, but then also talks about how I think he mentioned something about safety. And it's like, you realize that safety is a problem because of the regulations or lack thereof around it. Like if there were proper, it wasn't illegal and there were proper regulations, you wouldn't have a black market, and black market being inherently unsafe.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the criminalization of it that makes these things dangerous and unsafe. Like obviously that's true for most things, but you know, like criminalization of drugs, you know, leads to more addiction, all these things. But like at the end of the day, it's the same thing with sex work. It's like you can connotate it with negative things like drugs, like I just did. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's just because it's criminalized.
Right, exactly. There's Jack makes a really good point, says porn is why the internet is so popular. Porn sites have literally become the best cybersecurity in the world. And it's because the reason, have you ever heard the song "The Internet is for Porn"? The only reason there was so much money put into the internet and it went in the direction it did was because of the amount of money shoved into it by the porn industry. Mm-hmm. Porn industry's got money, bro. Money makes the world go round. At this point, Stonebutt had said, I'm at a loss of words for how evil this response of yours is. Being a sociopath is not cool or virtuous. And Crocoduck had said, because I just want the context, Crocoduck had said, oh, you think it's evil, whatever, but why is it wrong? What's the fundamental difference between a circus freak and a sex worker? Like, think about it. On one hand, you've got a guy with a deformed head who collects money to be gawked at. On the other hand, you've got a girl with big boobs. Girl, specifying girls.
With big boobs as well.
With big boobs, who collects money to be gawked at. In both cases, people pay for the cheap thrill of gawking at someone. And it makes me confused about what he thinks his YouTube channel is. Because his YouTube channel is gawk at my big brain compared to somebody with small brain. So what's the difference between him and a circus freak?
I was going to say, this line of thinking could be applied to any content creator. What's the difference between a circus freak and any content creator? You know, like, why does it have to just be like sex workers? You know, why does it have to be just reliant on people who perform sexually? Like, YouTubers, like his example of using like people with a deformed head, I instantly think of the amount of disabled people with physical deformities that profit off of it online, and no one's shaming them for that. No one's making fun of them for being dumb. Yeah, no one makes fun of them for being gawked at. I mean, maybe some people do because they're like ableist and disgusting, but at the end of the day, if someone who has a deformity needs money, because let's be honest, they're not going to be making that money with their disability payments. They're not going to be able to work a normal job. Yep. If they are making money by being gawked at, I respect the hell out of them for making money off of something they need to, like, something that hurts them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm disabled. I cannot work in certain environments. Like, if I could somehow make money off of that, I would. Like, but that's not the case, you know?
And would you find as much fulfillment out of it? Because some people, like, it's all, once you try it, you never go back. Because being in the entertainment industry and making people happy and being in, like, a different kind of service industry to a degree, depending on how, like, customer service, depending on how you parse it, can be very fulfilling. If you're a doctor and you get fulfillment out of making people feel better, because you're curing them of whatever ails them. Being a sex worker, you're curing people of whatever ails them. You're lonely, you're having a bad time. Come on, let's go have some fun. Let's go out, let's do something and you'll feel better and have a better day.
Not to mention that most prostitutes, the specific sex workers that he mentions in the thread, like people who have sex with other people when they don't want to,
Mhm.
most prostitutes are hired to talk to people. They
Yep.
are hired like therapists. People are lonely and they just want someone to talk to. There's a huge statistic about the amount of times
Escorts.
people pay for, yeah, escorts and prostitutes and sex work in general and just use it to talk. I've had someone tell me
Yep.
that they bought a 3 hour cam session and the girl thought she was going to be doing a full cam session and they just sat there talking. Like she was literally his therapist.
Yep. Just need somebody to vent to, somebody to talk to. And what's the goal here? To take away everybody else's fun? Wee woo, wee woo. It's the fun police.
Yeah.
Your
I
job
don't
is
want to.
debasement. Mine definitely isn't.
Oh my gosh. My most debasing fucking job, my most degrading job that I've ever had was working at a church daycare. That sounds to many people like the most wholesome, angelic, you're an angel, you're the best person in the world job.
Mhm.
And it's the most degrading, disgusting, and honestly, I think genuinely harmful to society. Like, and I hated that job, but I had to work. And I left that job to do something I genuinely enjoyed, which was sex work. I
Yep.
quit that job to do something I enjoyed with my own hours. That is the most respectable job. I'm not disrespected by parents or employers or contributing to harmful things in society. I am sitting here and making some people nut. You know what I mean? Like it's really not that deep.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be this complicated. There's a degree of, and like, what harm is being done by it? Are you harming yourself?
Some people can be, it like I think there's definitely something to be said about people who don't enjoy doing it. I
Right.
sometimes I have sex repulsion. I'm, demisexual and, have had trauma. So I get sex repulsed. There are times where I have not wanted to do a job. There's
Mhm.
times where I've actually been filming a video and I broke down crying because I couldn't do it. And you know what happened? I messaged my customer, said, "Hey, I cannot do this or I cannot do it today."
Yep.
And move on with my life. I either get
Right.
a refund them, or some of them don't even want to refund the money and just want me to make the content later. Like
Yeah.
it is something where I could say, yeah, there is times where people don't enjoy it. There are times where people feel awful, but like
You can
that's the
say that
same with
about
every job.
every job.
Every
Every
job,
job.
even jobs people love, like you're gonna have a bad day, and that's okay.
Yeah, there was one that I think my probably worst experience I ever had where I was like, this is the most, like, I feel so gross having been forced to do something that I did not want to do at a job. And it was when I worked, because I did a short stint where I worked at Walmart for like 10 months. And we worked night shift, and the job itself was fine. Doing and them trying to make you do this stupid fucking Walmart cheer in the back room. Oh God, I hate everything. Like, it's upset. Like, it physically repulsed me. It was
Honestly,
terrible.
I hate like corporate jobs in general just because they actually don't understand like customer service
Right.
despite insisting so much on it. And that's
Mhm.
another thing too is that I'm like sex workers in general know customer service better than anyone, Like we handle that shit ourselves. We do it all. And like when I think about working as a cashier, I'm like I used to get in trouble for trying to be a good cashier. Like I would get in trouble for being personable and trying to cater to individual customers. Like if
Yeah.
a certain customer would come in, I would try to adjust my attitude, the way I speak, and the things I like try to recommend them. I would get in trouble for that. And that's just how customer service should be. And that's degrading, is being yelled at for being a good employee. You know what I mean?
Crocoduck seems like the kind of person, and maybe I'm wrong about this. This is just kind of my takeaway: is that he's the kind of person who thinks the janitor is like beneath them. Like that's a job that you only do or only get because you didn't get a good enough education, or you had a like you had a bad home life, or you're like just not that great of a person, and so you're abasing yourself because you're cleaning the bathroom. So you're, in the way I would say this, like, to match this style of analogy, it's like, well, you're literally cleaning up shit. So
Yeah.
you've got to clean up other people's shit, and that's your literal job, therefore. And it's like, I have a dog, I pick up after him. Is that self-abasement? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
No,
and
I take
really,
care
I
of my
really
dog.
just want to know. I just want to know what they mean by degrading. Like, what is considered degrading, and why are some jobs more degrading than others? You know what I mean?
Janitors get paid great. It's like saying, "Oh, the garbage man because he picks up garbage is like is lesser than, or his job doesn't deserve respect because it involves literal garbage." And it's just like, but they get paid great, as they
I
should.
I know a lot of people who loved being janitors. Actually, the janitor at my elementary school was wealthy. He owned part of the mountain. He owned a lot of land on the mountain near a house. He owned two businesses. He literally just worked as a janitor at an elementary school just because it brought him joy. Which
Yeah,
I'm sure someone on the internet might hear that and take it a completely weird way about him working with children. But he genuinely was just like this nice Samoan guy who wanted to like spread cheer, clean up the school, and like help the community because he
yeah,
owned businesses. And he was like, "Well, I what am I going to do? Sit at home all day?" No, he
right.
enjoyed being a janitor.
Yeah. So you can be like, what you get fulfillment in shouldn't be shunned or frowned upon or condescended to. If you're not hurting anybody, there I see no problem with getting enjoyment and fulfillment of whatever that happens to be. If it's volunteer work, if it's teaching science, because I don't know what teaching science is besides taking knowledge that you have and doing everything that you can to make it communicable and easy to understand for lay people, which is abasing your education. You're trying to bring it down on purpose. Gup for Five said, I used to work at Kroger and got so stressed one day I nearly threw up. That's horrible. Did you actually like your job, out of curiosity? Because I've had plenty of jobs that I like the job and the people there make me want to like go postal. So it's not the job that I ever have a problem with. It's just the environment. Um,
Yeah, I when I worked as a cashier, in relation to Gupdu's comment, is that I had someone, which this was even aside from being a sex worker, I had someone take my photo while at the drive-through. Like someone came up and like started complimenting my hair and my appearance and took a photo of me before driving off. And I got so freaked out and had such a bad panic attack. I literally was like ran to the bathroom and sat there for like 10, 20 minutes just crying, hyperventilating, and I come out and I tried to play it off. I was like, "Oh, sorry, manager, I just had a bad shit or something, you know." And then later, I finally told them what happened. They're like, "You should have reported that. We would have like sent you home and stuff." And I'm like, "That was degrading. Having someone, I had no choice what to do. I didn't know what to do. I was
yeah,
awful,
that's
miserable, and
terrible.
at the end of the day, someone took a photo of me for my appearance, which is not much different than someone quote unquote degrading me for sex work for posting photos. You know what I
Yeah, at
mean?
least
Like
one you have control over and the other you don't.
that's really what it is. It's control. I
And
want
consent.
it, being a sex worker is I want control and to consent to a lot of things. Actually, a lot of sex workers are victims of sexual violence
Yep.
who have reclaimed their sexuality as a way to feel safe. Like
Yeah,
I feel safe knowing that I consent to this.
I actually talked to a social worker about those kinds of statistics in their area and talked to them about how they're like, yeah, for some people, this job ends up being therapeutic for them to deal with whatever trauma and they've dealt with in their past. Gup said that they hated it and it was the worst job ever. I'm sorry to hear that. And Smitty makes a good point. He says, "Didn't King Crocoduck debate flat Earth? What's more degrading to a science educator or like a scientist than treating flat Earth as if it's worth debating?"
Yeah.
And it's like, well, whatever's gonna bring in the dough, right? Like King Crocoduck had to bring in money while he was dead getting his degrees. Do you have to have money? Do you have to do a job to get money? Well, then you're trading your time and effort and energy for an amount that you can then do something else with. And I guarantee you, sex workers are making a hell of a lot more than average people working two jobs at minimum wage.
Yeah.
Dapper says, wait, am I debasing myself with counter young earth creationist content? Maybe. King Crocoduck said in response to, because Benthoven, no relation, saw this and was just like, is this real life? Like, what kind of question? What is this thread? And Crocoduck responded with, yes, now are we going to faint in our couches, or are we going to actually think about this? And like, I think you've misunderstood the criticism. People are thinking about this, and what you're saying doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't.
King
You're
Crocoduck seems to be the one not thinking about it.
that is how it comes across because a lot of these analogies and a lot of these kind of statements, as soon as you think about it for longer than 30 seconds, like you have your initial reaction of like, wow, that's a douchey thing to say. But as soon as you start breaking it down, it's like very bold of sex workers should demand respect for their profession when their career is literally the embodiment of self-abasement. People are people no matter what fucking job they do, dude. And if you're saying that the career itself or the job itself doesn't deserve respect in a bubble, how do you separate that bubble? This is the hate the sin and not the sinner. This is like, oh, we love gay people. We just don't like that they're gay.
Yeah.
What
Like
do
the
you
friend who goes,
mean?
I love my gay friends. I just don't agree with their lifestyle. And you're like, that's not how that works.
Right. You either respect them or you don't. There isn't really much of a middle ground there. Now you could say, I don't respect them, but I go out of my way to not treat them like garbage because I respect them at least that much. That they don't deserve to be treated like garbage because nobody deserves to be treated like garbage. Because especially because of their job. Right. And so but where's this line here? Like I don't because that's what he said in his clarification down here, right? He said specifically I don't have anything against sex workers outside of the context of their profession. So you have an issue with sex workers because of their profession. And that's their profession and that it's their professional profession that I fundamentally don't respect.
I would love to ask him what other professions he finds like not respectable because of what they're doing. Like, is an actor like a Hollywood actor, not like a sex work actor, like is an actor degrading themselves because of the silly things they have to do on TV? Is someone who works at Disney Channel degrading themselves because they constantly have to like throw themselves in mud and slime and do silly things that would be considered degrading? No, because they're acting. It's the same thing with sex workers. Sex work in itself is a performance. You are never going to be watching them be their actual selves, even if you are having sex with them right then and there. That moan might not be real. I don't know how to tell you this, but it's a
Right.
performance. So why what other career is degrading? Is an actor degrading because you do silly things? Is a construction worker degrading because you do a lot of manual labor? Like, is being in the military degrading because you have to listen to people bark orders at you and do what they say without questioning it? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of careers and industries that could be considered degrading based on whatever you find degrading. But I'm sitting here going, what does he think is degrading? What other industries is degrading and debasing me? You know what I mean?
Well, he's kind of gone he goes into that. Let me pull it up here. I think I have a screenshot of it. Instead of just searching it, I think I have faster access. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Right here, he says, "I'll give prostitutes this much. At least they're not sociologists." So he thinks that social science, right there, there you go. So he's like, you don't deserve to be respected for your profession, or because your profession doesn't deserve to be respected, and neither does sociology.
You know what's funny
Or
is that my sister's, I think, a sociology major. So I guess both me and my sister don't deserve any respect because of our choices in life.
it's such a bizarre thing because I don't know how you could take an entire like such an umbrella term because social science involves anthropology, it involves a lot of history, a lot of any kind of like study of society throughout the ages, and a lot of science and information and practicality to the science that Crocoduck does is directly related to sociology. If you're going to debate people, for example, or you're going to communicate science, what is that if not sociology? You need to understand how people think and understand how to communicate, and communication is based in sociology. Maybe I'm just crazy.
Yeah, I don't know what he's thinking. Like, and what a weird thing to like branch off to. Like it seems like when someone says sociologist and like are shaming them, it just makes me like think that there is definitely like a bias. Like all of their comments seem to be about women sex workers, not non-binary trans or, men. And like now he's talking about sociologists, and I'm sitting here thinking like this just sounds like, and not to really bring politics into it, but this sounds like a right-winging person who's sitting here going, I have all these underlying issues that make me hate these things. It's not the thing themselves, you know?
Yeah, and there's if you're gonna debate flat Earth, or you're gonna debate young Earth creation, or you're gonna be an advocate for science against a religion or for whatever, which is what he is known for. What you if you're debating those things, that's sociology. Sociologists study human behaviors. And the only reason you have any other kind of science is because of people wanting to study things. And so like what okay, so if I say I want to study brain chemistry, where do you start with brain chemistry and what's the practicality of brain chemistry? It's social studies. It's all social studies. Because it's social
Yeah,
studies until it becomes
sociology.
chemistry or until it becomes biology, until it becomes chemistry, until it becomes physics, until it
Yeah.
becomes math. And that goes the other way too. It's math that's extrapolated into this, which is extrapolated into this, which is and the practicality of the application
Mhm.
of that science is okay, so how does it practically work and function in society, and how can we use this information to make society better, et cetera, et cetera.
Honestly, for me, the best way to describe sociology is that if psychology is the study of the human mind and the internal, sociology is the external.
Mm-hmm.
Sociology is deciding the external factors that form humans as it's psychology is the inner, sociology is the outer. It's just the best way for me to describe it.
Well, even his tweet here talking about the description of sex workers and his understanding or misunderstanding of what they do, and then his descriptions are all based on information brought by sociology. If you want to know the statistics about STDs and sex work, you need sociology. Because who's asking the questions? Who's getting the survey? Who's gathering that information for you?
Exactly.
So any statistic that he wants to throw out, which he doesn't in this thread, but he alludes to that he would have, like he's done research and has some of these statistics. Those statistics only exist because of sociology. And there's this huge overarching political problem and fundamentalism problem around it that he's displaying right here. Right? It's a fundamental issue of like a personal belief. Well, I wouldn't want my kids doing it, and I wouldn't like doing it. Therefore, it is a bad thing, and other people shouldn't do it, or they should feel bad for doing it.
Oh my gosh, I've actually had a customer talk to me about that. Someone who has purchased content from me actually decided to like talk to me about it. And they're like, so like I couldn't even paraphrase the conversation, but at the end of the day, he really was just asking me like how he asked me something about like how do you do this knowing you're disrespecting your parents? And I was like, I'm what?
What?
And they were basically they because I live with my parents, and so because I'm disabled as I've mentioned, and so and
Right.
my parents are really great. They know what I do, like it sure is it a weird topic of conversation, yeah, because people don't talk about their sex lives. I'm not going to talk to my parents about their sex life, but so we don't talk about my career much, but it's just weird that they were like, well, how do you do that in their house? Like you're disrespecting their house. And I'm like, the house is a physical building without feelings, and my
Right.
parents don't care. I could do this in this house if my parents didn't live here. Like why does my building have like what does my building have anything to do with this? Like they were just saying that they would never want their children to do it, and then they were saying how can I do it knowing I disrespect my parents? And I was like, you have literally purchased my content. You're the reason I'm doing this.
Oh,
How
you're
can I do this knowing I'm
disrespecting.
disrespecting my parents?
Yeah.
By giving them money so I can live in their house.
If you
That's what
if
I'm
this is
doing.
disrespecting my parents, then why do you think that you're not disrespecting your parents by buying my content? Like, what are you talking about? It's
Exactly.
such a weird double standard and like just a weird like blind spot. It's to me it doesn't make any sense to say that any adult is disrespecting their parents. You're an adult. You don't belong to your parents anymore. And that's like functionally when
Exactly.
Crocoduck brought up his kids, functionally, by the time they're old enough to make a decision that kind of decision that it would not be considered any kind of like sex trafficking or anything. And let's say they're like, nah, 25, and they've gone to college and they've done this, that, and the other thing, and they've got their education because, believe it or not, sex workers have an education sometimes and they choose to do sex work anyway. And then they go ahead.
Most sex workers I know are very educated. A lot of them are nurses, actually.
Yeah, there you go. And so you've got, it's not up to you anymore as the parent. It's your job to give them resources and to help them up to a certain point, and then it's up to them to make decisions. So are you going to disown your child because they got into sex work, because they chose to get into sex work? Okay, weird decision, but I guess you didn't really care about your kid the way you think you do.
Yeah, like I would never want my child to join like the military. But you know what would happen if my child turned 18 and said, "Goodbye, mother, I'm joining the war." I would go, I mean, I would sob uncontrollably and then go, "Damn, I respect your choice. Right. I respect the hell out of you for doing this." Like, it does not matter, you know? Like, I don't understand why someone would care about what their child does career-wise outside of, like, just really personal biases. Like, and even at the end of the day, my personal biases should not affect my child.
Right.
I would not want them to go to war because I wouldn't want them to die, but I'd like to educate them about, like, you know, problems in the industry the same way I would if my child decided to be a sex worker. I'd be like, look out for dangerous behaviors, look out for predators, you know, don't do customers. Like, there's a lot of things where I'm like,
if you work in customer service, write everything down so the company doesn't screw you over. Like, just basic knowledge about how to deal with different kinds of contracts and stuff. I would be tempted to not want my kid to join. I don't have a kid. If I had a kid, I wouldn't want my kid to join necessarily right out of high school. I'd be like, I understand that you want to make this choice. Can I encourage you to maybe do this, this, and this first, and then make that decision, right? And just because I think 18 is like not a, then again, I'm also somebody who's like, maybe you shouldn't sign off on a $10,100 loan for school at 18 either. So, going into this, there's because like now it's just a question about parenting. This person had said, very bold of you to deny anybody respect for their profession as if you are something better or were asked to grade jobs by respectability, whichever standard that is, because there has been no standard provided, right? Which is funny because this person then did ask for a standard. He said, but my profession is better than prostitution. If not all professions are, except for sociologists, I guess. And whatever. But by which sincere standard? And then he dodges. What's your standard? What standard are you measuring the goodness of a career choice or a job? Is it money?
Answering a question with a question.
Yeah, what counts as sincere standard? Do you not think that I sincerely believe this? No, what they're asking is sincere standard as in a consistent standard. You're playing semantics, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
The person said, no, I believe you are raving. You believe you are a raving, steaming hypocrite that does not use sincere standards at all. The use of words like debasing is very insincere. Heat up a bowl of alphabet soup and throw it across the room. Whatever letters end up spelling will make more sense than whatever the fuck you wrote here. No,
you know, for someone who studied science, they don't seem very well articulated. You know, for someone who supposedly has a degree to some degree, or even just went to college for a day, they don't seem to understand a eloquently written response to them, and that's just willful ignorance because they don't want to listen to someone else. You know, like,
I don't know what about this doesn't make any sense. They think you're having a fit on Twitter, right? Like, that's what they're saying. They think you're throwing a fit. They think you're a hypocrite because you're not using, like, consistent like, if you're saying, hey, I'm measuring jobs, here's the criteria, which is what they're asking. And using these types of words are very insincere because you're coloring the argument. You're coloring the opinion rather than the facts of the matter. And if you have a criteria, you could say, okay, here's my data points and here's why, da 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 da, and he's dodging it. And so, and here he is just throwing the hissy fit that this person says that they're throwing. So
Yeah, even as someone who sometimes, like, I sometimes can't understand well written and well articulated sentences. Like, the best way to describe it is if I read something that sounds too smart, sometimes I just can't process what it says. And there's
Oh, sure.
nothing about that comment that seems too smart for someone to understand. You know, everything I can understand that. Like, I can read it, I understand everything they're trying to say, and there's nothing complicated about their response back to him. And yet he's like, I don't understand what you're saying because you aren't listening. That's really how simple it is that Crocoduck is not listening and doesn't want to listen.
Yeah. I
He
find
says
it
he wants to debate it, but won't debate it.
right. Yeah, he's avoiding it. He did say that he was interested in coming on and having a conversation, and he assured me that he would not overwhelm me with facts and statistics, which I was very concerned about. I was very, very worried about that. But
Statistics can also be biased as well. If you're getting
right.
your statistics about OnlyFans from a website that specifically hates OnlyFans, you're going to get bad statistics that aren't true. If you are looking at a website that's like an evangelical Christian website, they're not going to give you accurate statistics about prostitution.
Right.
You know, like, it depends on where your statistics come from.
I think my favorite, a lot of it has to do with where the analysis is coming from and what question was asked, right? Because statistics are answers to questions, and statistics are easily manipulated. So a really good example that I tend towards is gun violence in America. Gun violence in America seems really, 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 really high. So it makes people not want to go to America. But the thing is a lot of gun violence in America is localized to a handful of places. So if you travel to, say, Arizona, most of Arizona is you're not gonna run into a gun violence problem. But if you go to Florida, you might run into something completely different. So statistics can easily be skewed one way or another in that regard. So statistics, and especially if you're going to shit on sociologists, you know, the people who are getting you your statistics, you can just take all the statistics and throw them the fuck out the window. So Mani had asked a question and said, how does sex abase anyone if consent is there and they are the party involved enjoying it? And his response to this was, and this was kind of what you brought up earlier, he said, some people enjoy being abased. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that there are some circus freaks who liked having strangers throw peanuts at them. What bewilders me is where such people then insist that what they are doing is respectable. Like what? Question mark. And then Mani had responded with, how does sex abase anyone? Unless you want it to, it doesn't.
Yeah, and then he brings up the point of if you have sex with someone that you don't want or you're only doing it for money, then you're forcing yourself to do it and it's not consensual, which it makes it degrading. But that's just inherently not true.
Right. How is sleeping with someone you're not attracted to degrading? How do you know that all sex workers do not feel attracted to their clients? Bold claim.
I know someone, it's a friend of a friend. I'm not friends with her personally, but she genuinely loves sex. Like, she genuinely loves having sex with ugly motherfuckers. Like, that is her phrasing. She's like, I will, if you are ugly, I will have sex with you. And that's just her thing. So when she posts on her like TikTok or Instagram or YouTube saying, hey, I had sex with like the ugliest fan, come watch or something, while that's clickbaity, and you know, you could argue it's a little degrading, but it's not, because she enjoys it. Like, I feel like what makes it degrading really comes down to the person who is quote unquote being degraded. If I'm doing something I love and a bunch of people are watching me and they think it's degrading, but I don't, is it really degrading? You know, it's like cringe culture. It's sure people could argue it's cringe, but cringe is also completely subjective. So
yeah, and you also get the complete opposite way of how many people in the industry view themselves as or present themselves as doms. And if you present yourself as a dom or you're a dom, what's abasing about that? You're literally the one doing the abasing. Gup for two.
Yeah, and even if
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, even if I personally, if someone hired me to debase me and to degrade me, like that's what they want as a customer, I also just no, I just don't see it as debasement if it is a consensual agreement. You know what I mean?
Mhm, mhm.
Like, I don't like, if someone pays me to degrade me, it's not really degrading me if it's a consensual interaction that I agree to. I'm
And
not really being
there's a
degraded. I'm
he seems to be
yeah.
saying that like the thing that makes it degrading is that you're trading money for it. And it's like, what? That's every job. Gup for two said using freaks for the disabled is also not great. Yeah, it's a bit yikes. That might be a
Extremely ableist. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah, I'm
Danny
not on
said,
camera, but I
sorry.
have been using air quotes every time I said freaks because I'm quoting him. But yeah,
Right.
his ableist language is definitely something to be discussed.
Noted. It's something that to be unpacked. Danny said, I wouldn't spend 40 hours a week writing corporate software if I wasn't getting paid. Am I debasing myself? Um, April for two said, cringe is indeed subjective. Oh, absolutely. And sometimes you do cringy stuff on purpose because it's fun. Some people have sex
Yes.
because it's fun to have sex. Sex does not have to be this serious business that must produce a child, or doesn't have to be this serious business that if you get paid to have a good time, why shouldn't you get paid to have a good time?
Also, why is monetizing something you enjoy bad? If you enjoy having sex and it's now degrading because you're doing it for money, what about the people who like making jewelry? I now sell jewelry and
Mhm.
I'm degrading myself because I'm doing it for money. I'm an artist. I love drawing and now I'm degrading myself because I'm only doing it for money. No,
I'm a
that is
scientist.
just asinine
I
logic.
I'm a scientist. I like doing science. Now I do research for money. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm autistic and I love doing research and hyperfixating on a topic at a time. Now I am a scientific researcher. Am I degrading myself because I started monetizing my habits? No, like
Right. I mean, I mean, there is something to be said for selling out. So if like, hey, I'm a scientist and
yeah.
I studied molecular biology and I've decided to work for a eugenics program or a company that focuses on eugenics, depending on what you're doing, big yikes. So does that count as
Yeah,
selling out?
like with selling out and sex work and stuff, there are things that I definitely consider selling out. Like there's a
Yeah.
reason I don't consider I'm not a successful sex worker. I don't sell out, and that's not a
Mhm.
problem either with people who do. Because
Well, how do
even
you
then, I
measure
think about people
success,
who,
right? Yeah.
yeah, I just, well, making a livable income is for me the first step for success.
Yeah, right?
No, but like when I think about like what sex workers do that I would consider degrading as a sex worker myself, there are things that I choose not to do because to me it would degrade me, but that doesn't mean it's degrading someone else. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm doing incest on TikTok. I'm not going to lie and say my friend is my
Right.
stepmom. That's cringe and would be
Mhm.
degrading to me. That is not cringe and not degrading to my sex work friends who choose to do that because that is what they want to advertise their content. Is that cringy to me? Is that quote unquote selling out? Sure. It's also
Right.
none of my business and I don't care. I think people should do what they have to make their bag as long as it's not hurting anyone. You
Right.
know, so when people talk about what's degrading, I'm like, I know I see a lot of things that people do that I don't do because it would be degrading to me. But if someone else does it and they have no problem with it, then it's not degrading at all.
What would have been degrading to me is if I choose to work in an environment where I'm not being respected.
Exactly.
So if I'm working with people who don't respect me or my work or don't like appreciate the whatever it is that I bring to the table as a benefit to that group or company or person or situation, that's when I start getting I don't like that. Right? And so that to me would be a maybe because what he's trying to present this as if it's objective, right? When it's clearly subjective and this is just his that's just like your fucking opinion, bro. Um,
Yeah.
but I would say that I think you could probably draw some kind of generalized objective lines. And I'm using the term objective loosely because they're objective in a gray sense, that you could probably be a little bit arbitrary and say, you know what, this line here is degrading for anybody, and then whether or not people shouldn't be, in my opinion, disrespected because they're choosing to degrade themselves over something. Like, well, since he was talking about
Yeah.
circus freaks, there was a woman who had three kids to feed, and she sat around for as part of a traveling troupe as the ugliest woman alive. and she sat there and let people throw peanuts at her so she could feed her kids. Why should that not be respected as just putting yourself out
Exactly.
there and on the line to do whatever it is you needed to do to feed your fucking family?
Yeah, I've seen people talk about that on Twitter a lot of people, in other actually viral threads about people talking about what sex work is considered work and whatnot. I've seen sex workers be like, how is me earning money to pay my children to live disrespectful? Like, how is that not respected? And they were like,
Right.
oh, because you're disrespecting your kids by being sexual. And they're like, how does me doing this have anything to do with my kids other than the money comes in? People don't like, I don't know. There's one thing I don't understand is that the way they equate sex workers as their identity and who they
Right.
are bleeding outside of work. Because if I log off my computer, I'm not a sex worker anymore. I went up
You're
if my
you.
laptop's closed and my phone is off, I'm
Mhm.
me. I'm just some nerd who plays D&D and stuff.
Well,
Like I
yeah,
am not a sexual object to be like seen as a sex worker 24/7, and that's the same with all sex workers.
I think that's
Like
something to be said about like the psychology of people who identify as their job, right? So you get somebody
yeah.
who's a scientist who's like, no, I identify as a scientist because I am proud of what I do, and a
Mhm.
sex worker who chooses to not identify as a sex worker out when they're at the grocery store shouldn't be shit on for doing that. Same with like a teacher. If somebody's a teacher, they're like, hey, I have this way of behaving in class, and when class is over, I go out and do sex work, or I go out to the bar,
Exactly.
or I go to the grocery store like a regular fucking human being. And it's bizarre to, and like I don't think people are necessarily wrong to identify as their job if that's what they want to do, if that's what brings them fulfillment. You're not doing anything wrong, you're not doing anything bad. But to tell people that, oh, but think of the children. Your kids might get bullied if the other kids find out that you're a sex worker. Well, first off, why are those kids finding out about sex workers? That's a question for their parents.
I I've had someone ask that when I worked at the daycare. They're like, "What if someone finds out that you do sex work? Like, what if someone finds out you have an OnlyFans?" I'm like, I work at a church. If someone found out I have an OnlyFans, they have some splaining to do. Like
Yeah.
also, Dapper Dinosaur. I do not actually play D&D. I play Pathfinder. D&D is my catch-all term for TTRPGs for
Yeah, we're
people
gonna
who
have
don't
to
know.
we're gonna have to fix that terminology, I think, across the
I
board
know.
because big old yikes. And I do it too, so I don't mean to single you out. I think
Ah,
everybody's gonna
yeah.
have a bit of a terminology flip over to get used to.
Yeah, the
When it
amount
comes
of
to
people who don't know
sorry.
what I'm talking about.
Oh, you'd be
I always
surprised
like
on
I
this
go,
channel. You'd be
yeah,
surprised. We all know what you're talking about. Don't worry.
good, good. Had to get my disclaimer out there with the climate that's going on. I was like, wait, I do
Yeah.
not play Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh shit. The PR. No. There's a there's something also to be said for like, oh well, your kid's gonna get bullied. Bro, kids bully kids about fucking everything. If they find out your
Dude,
parent is like a garbage man, if they find out your parent is
yeah.
anything, they will find a way to make fun of the other kids. That's part of being a kid. Now, is it a good thing? And is there lines to be drawn about that? Yeah, sure. But there's no need to single out one job.
Yeah. Kids can
Stacy's
get
mom.
bullied for literally anything.
Yeah. Oh, you sneezed funny in class once? Ah, shit.
Oh, your name is Mike? That rhymes with bike. Your name is Mycicle Bicycle now. Like
Bicycle? Ooh, do I
like
know
you will
anybody
get
named
bullied
Mike?
forever.
Yep.
My name
What's your
is
name
like
now?
I got called my name was Sierra, and so people called me Syria. That
Oh
is how
no.
much people will just make fun of things for no reason.
My
Like it
sister found out I go by like a goblin online and she's like, Goblin these nuts. I was like, yeah,
oh
okay.
my gosh.
Here we go. She named me that in bowling. I was like, thanks.
That's great.
That's a great old time, and I'm all for it. So I don't know. It just seems like a lot of these lines are just picking on sex work in particular when it applies across the board, particularly Crocoduck's rhetoric that we've kind of looked at.
Yeah, it's
Bicycle bicycle.
oh god.
I'm sold on bicycle for forever now.
They could have
Oh
gone with Mike Bike because it rhymes, but no.
no, this is so much better. This is so much better. Yeah, you farted in class. Call you gas chamber now. Yep. Yup. There's I don't know. I think that about. Do you have any? I know you had said you wanted to make sure you touched on some points. Is there anything that you wanted to go over again or touch on for sure? Just make sure we got it.
Oh, my notes were mostly just making sure I brought up, my other degrading jobs that most people would consider very respectable, like especially the
Mm-hmm.
church job. I like a lot of people found that to be the most respectable job. When I list my jobs, I'm like, that was the most degrading one I ever had, the least
Mm-hmm.
respectful, genuinely harmful to society. I also mentioned, like sex work and how sex repulsion is something to bring up, but consent is really what matters. Um, that's pretty much my most important notes about the topic.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the confusion or the crossing of consensual sex work and sex trafficking. And
Yeah.
like the stickiness of like the politics and laws around that. And I'm really not a fan of like this condescending style of like what my job is better than your job. And then when asked what their criteria was, we're like, "You don't make any sense. Why are you asking about criteria? That's absurd."
Yeah,
It
what really got
seems
me was just that
yeah.
they couldn't bring up an actual foundation to their argument. Like
Mm,
with the way I debate things online, even if I'm very wrong, I at least will still list the reasons why I think the way I think. If I was the one in this situation who said my job deserves more respect than XYZ, I would sit there and at least explain my criteria of, well, what do I define as a respectful job? Am I being treated fairly by employers?
mm,
Is customer service, like, are customers, like, for a lot of people, they think that sex work is degrading because of the customer service aspect of it. It's because they think your customers are disrespecting you. They're like, oh, you are being objectified by them. They don't think of you as people.
mm,
They're just gross, trying to get a nut. And honestly, I could say that most of my customers in terms of sex work have been the best customers I've ever had in my life
mm.
compared to working a retail or service industry job. Like, people will yell at me because the cook got the order wrong, even though I'm the cashier.
Yeah.
But if I'm doing the customer service in my sex work, and even if I can't even get content out, I'll have customers who are like, no problem, like, it's not a big deal. Or if I couldn't make content, they'd be like, oh, keep the money. I hope you're feeling better. Like, if I'm ever sick and cannot make content, I have the best, sweetest customers who are just like, just feel better. Here's a tip. Like, get yourself some medicine and then send the content whenever you're ready.
What was it that the conservatives that also make these kinds of arguments that we're hearing from Crocoduck, these appeals to emotion or appeals to this ick factor recently didn't pass in America that had something to do with people getting sick, regular sick days? And that happened in the UK recently too with a subsystem, if I understand correctly. Like, no, fuck you. You don't get to be treated like a human being, Mr. Truck Driver.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's absurd to say that people deserve to be treated differently based on their job. If you're putting food on the
Yeah.
table, good for you.
And even if you do disrespect my career, keep it to yourself. I am
Sure.
not my career. You know,
Mhm.
like, if someone hates, like, the military as a industry because of, like, the government, what
Mhm.
I'm not going to do? Go up to a veteran and sit there and shit on the military. That is not their problem. They are a person who did their job, they served, and I respect the hell out of them. You know what I mean? Like, people don't, I very rarely see people get attacked for their jobs when people disrespect it because it's
Mhm.
not their identity. Like, you
Mhm.
can identify as that and make it a big part of who you are. Like I do. I'm a sex worker and I'm not ashamed of it. But at the end of the day, I'm like, when I clock out and I'm not working anymore, I still deserve respect because I'm a human being, regardless of my job.
I also think that it's a bit absurd to say something like this, then say that disabled people are freaks for money and sex work is the equivalent of that, and then say that you're not disrespecting the people, you're just disrespecting the profession. I think that's just a lie, personally. But I did promise
Yeah,
him that I
especially
would
with
put that
so
out there,
many.
as if that made him look
Yeah,
better.
especially when so many sex workers are disabled. Like, there's a reason a lot of us do this, and it's because, especially survival sex workers, the one he claims he respects, are disabled.
Right.
We make our money how we need to make our money because that's what we have to do, the same as the disabled people who had to join circuses back in the day, the quote unquote freaks he keeps disrespecting. he keeps talking about people who are deformed and like being like, oh, well, if you're deformed and you're getting debased, it's like, well, if I'm deformed and I'm making money off of it, I respect that. I respect the hell out of people who make profit off of a worse situation.
Yep. Well, yeah, and I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. Just so we don't go over time.
Mm-hmm.
I did heads up for chat and for you if you're interested as well. I have been in contact with somebody who is a sociologist who studies this stuff, and I have notes because if we're gonna talk about a profession like sex work, we should talk about or talk to people who are professionals in that area and in that field. So if
Exactly.
we're going to talk about sex work and we're going to talk about sociology and social sciences, then we need to talk to the professionals, of which Crocoduck is not, to be clear. He is a professional. He does have degrees. I'm not going to say that his degrees aren't worth anything. They certainly are worth whatever he paid for them and whatever he had to do to get them, whatever debasing or abasing thing that he needed to do to make his shit done. He ought to be respected for being able to complete those things. However, a shitty hot take is a shitty hot take, and I ain't gonna shy away from that. But yeah, let's actually talk to. I am perfectly fine with bringing Crocoduck on at some point if he feels comfortable or wants to do so after having this conversation and after I'm done organizing this talk and video with the social with the sociologist, the social scientist. Because I think that's fair. I think it's fair to like talk to people in the profession, or in the field that you're gonna actually try to cover. April for two said, "Fork bishes get money." Hell yeah, hell yeah. So Thorn, you wanna shill yourself? I got some links down below, but you want to tell people where to find you and what you can do, and if you want to go find her and become a client, perhaps.
Yes. You could find, I'm mostly active on my Twitter, which is just at ThornChan, and as you can see on the screen, it's Thorn with an E at the end of it. I do sex work. I mostly make content that includes like nudes, boudoir. I also fashion model if any of you people are clothing, whatever. I do a lot of stuff in terms of sex work. I do the eating fetish content. I also have a partner that I can make boy-girl content with and a partner for girl-girl content if that's the thing you're into. Outside of the sex work content, though, I do a lot of, TTRPG, not D&D content, and complain online, and I fight people who are wrong and do a lot of philanthropy and charity. So if you want to find me to listen to me complain about things or talk about disability rights, LGBT rights, and occasionally post pictures of my butt, then you can find me at ThornChan on Instagram, Twitter, Hive, and most social media.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for coming. I will be live again later today to talk to Landon. There has been an eruption of Mount Kilauea, so I was almost right. So we're going to do a quickie on that one and talk about kind of what's gone on, what's happening, and what's happening currently, because there's currently some volcanic activity going on. And that will be a debate hub a little bit later today. I believe it's at 6. And then you might see me also again live at 9, or you're going to see me on Saturday. It might be Saturday just so I can take a nap. We'll see how it goes. And we will talk about the D&D updates, because those are spicy. I can't wait to shred it. It's going to be so much fun. And if you don't know if it's going to be funnier if I'm tired or if it's going to be funnier if I have a lot of like a lot of energy. So make sure to like and subscribe and all that good shit. Comment and share if you learned something. And we'll see you guys next time. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.
Hello.
Welcome back to Don't Fekk Friday.
Don't Fekk
Friday. Don't Fekk Friday.
Don't Fekk
Don't Fekk Friday.
It's going to be fun.